Well, hello. Hope everybody's doing all right today. With everything that's going on in this pandemic, hope everybody's staying safe. Thought I would make a little video on Hondas and Acuras and sometimes why they don't start when you turn the key. You turn the key and it's nothing. You don't hear the fuel pump or anything. So I just wanted to start off by going through some steps and some things that it could possibly be and some things that I've seen. A little bit about myself. I am a retired master mechanic. So I just kind of try and make little videos now, keep people entertained, trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you're watching this, please subscribe, and let's get into the video. All right, you're in your early 90s to 2000 Honda. You turn the key. You go to the third position start. It turns over, nothing's happening. The engine's spinning over. It sounds like it's, wanting to start, but it's not. Then you notice you don't hear the fuel pump running. So the very, very first thing that I recommend is going to check your fuses. Check your fuel pump fuse. Check anything associated with the fuel pump or fuel system in the fuse panel or fuse box located under the dashboard or in the engine compartment. And I just have a blown fuse here just to show you guys. This is a 35 amp. It's pretty high amperage. You see it's blown in there. That's what a blown fuse looks like. So just look at first to see if you got a blown fuse or anything. And that's the first thing you should check. You check, you find out there's no blown fuses. Everything's good. The next thing is going to require a little technical knowledge. Most of the Honda fuel pumps are underneath the rear back seat. So just pull the seat out, get a multimeter or a test light, and test with the key on. Check to see if you have a ground back there. See if you hear it coming on. Tap the top of it. See if sometimes if you jar a fuel pump, it'll turn on. And then have somebody turn the key and see if you get voltage back there on the power side of the harness. You do all that, there's no voltage. The car still just turns over. The very next common issue is going to be these guys. And these are the main relays on Hondas. They all look about the same, different colors, brown, black. This hook may be bent to the left, to the right. But most of them look like this. They may have another pin there. These things are pretty common to fail. And when I say fail, I don't mean the electronics inside. I mean the soldering joints. In the early 90s, solder wasn't as great as it is now. So sometimes these joints get a cold solder or a cold joint, meaning when it heats up and expands, the solder separates from the board, causing a hard start or no start condition in Hondas and Acuras. They're very easy to open. You would just pry on these two sides, there's two tabs, and it slides right out. And if you see, you got two tabs right there, one there and one there, and they just bend out and pry out. And then you'll remove your actual part here. And this is the main relay. This controls power to the fuel pump. It controls a lot of things with a Honda, but mainly the fuel pump. As you can see, this is a newer one, but if you look, I was having problems with mine, and in tracing down problems, I didn't want to leave anything unturned, even though this was new. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see. I reflowed the solder on all these joints. So by reflowing the solder in these joints, you're essentially reconnecting them to the circuit board, and you see how they're all got a little shine on them. You just hit them with a little solder. And that, if the board doesn't look burnt or nothing smells funny in there, this should be good to go back into the car. So you solder up your main relay, or you swap it out. I think they're about 80 bucks. You swap it out, you put it in, turn the key, you still ain't got no fuel. Pump's not running still. Shit. What's the next thing? Well, the ECU. You gotta go in the ECU for this one. So let's see. Let me find me a good ECU here to look at. Alright, so here we have a P28 ECU. Common. They run a lot of Hondas. Let's get a good focus in there for you guys. Alright, it's a P28. The plugs are off to the left here. So we're looking at the board, you know, and you're just looking for anything burnt, anything, you know, misaligned, just anything not looking right. And as you can see on here, this board looks good. The conformal coating's good. And you would need a magnifying glass to look at it, but one of the main things you're going to be looking at here is the capacitors. I'll zoom in here so you guys can see it. Now these capacitors here. It's not going to let me focus. Alright, there we go. You see C14 there? I'm sorry for the unsteady hand here. C14 is the main capacitor, which is the big fat one on the board. These things are nearing this. See, this ECU was made. Hold on, let me clean it off real quick. It looks like December 5th, 1990. So this ECU is older than some of you people watching this. 1990, so this ECU is 30 years old, right? P28 ECU. So you're gonna start looking at these capacitors, right? They're all over the board. Here, 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 here. And you're gonna start noticing that at 30 years, they got some age on them. So you go in there, you start replacing the caps. I have some. You guys can PM me on Facebook or send a message here. And these are caps. Sorry, there's extra stuff in there. That's your main C14 capacitor right there. So they like to tend to leak on the bottom, and they'll leak and they'll explode on that board, and it'll make a mess. And if they stay too long, they can actually damage the board. So I'll get all these little capacitors in my hand to show you guys. This would be the next step. So there's usually 7 or 8 of them. And they're generally easy to replace. Let me see if I got a burnt one here. Yeah, I do. So what happens is they leak out on the board. And I'll try and get that in focus for you guys. If you can see, the bottom of it has like a gooey, sticky substance on it. That's the electrolyte in there. It's essentially a small battery. And maybe that one's a little better for you guys. You see all that goo down there, and it's like, it looks like tar. That cap had leaked on the board. Let me find another one for you. Okay, this one's got some green stuff on it, so you might be able to see this one better. Look at that. Alright, perfect. So this one leaked on the board and caused some serious damage to the board. And see how it's swollen looking? So they're 30 years old. They're a small battery. They're expanding, they're contracting. They're sitting in a car for a long time, you know, and they could leak and cause damage to the board. So I'm going to see if I have a board here that shows some electrolyte damage. To see if I can't show you guys. Let's see. Okay. So if you look real close, you see how it has that black burn mark? And it's all burned in there. Those capacitors leaked. See down there? They had leaked on the board and caused some damage, so we replaced them and got them back in there. Okay, so let's just recap about everything we talked about. We talked about checking fuses first, you know, checking the simple things, checking to see if you got power back at the fuel pump, checking the main relay and the cold solder joints. And then we spoke about capacitors, the C14, and all these other little ones that are all around here. And looking for any burned, you know, resistors, transistors, capacitors, anything like that. And any trace marks, burn marks on the board that has show with the leaking electrolyte and all that. When you get to this point, I believe it's beyond the scope of a DIYer. Even replacing these capacitors are tough on some boards. You have to have special tools with it, solder desuckers, desoldering wick, and all that stuff. So I'm going to show the back of one of the boards that I have open right now, just to show you how tight some of these spots actually are. So here's another P28, and I'm gonna look for some spots that I actually soldered in myself and repaired. Okay, so I believe alright, so I put the 28 pin port in, and I put the CN2 data logger in on this one, and I'm gonna show you guys basically how tiny these ports are. And I know some of you have chipped before, but I'm just showing this as an overview for everybody on the channel. Look at how how tiny those points are, and I'll point them out there. That's the tip of a pick. You see my pick there? And I'll get some light on there. That's the tip of a pick, and that's the point that you got to solder. And when you start to solder in all these little points, you have to be aware of temperature. And if you got too much heat on your soldering gun, or you're using like one of those cheap eBay 30 watt, 25 watt soldering guns, you can actually pop these capacitors and then cause the same problem that you're trying to avoid with leaking capacitors. So you gotta have an adjustable soldering iron, a whole bunch of actual tools. So when you get to the point of getting into the ECU, be careful. You know, you don't want to destroy anything. So we're gonna go into talking about other chips on here that fail, that I've seen fail, but that'll be in the next video. So this is the end of part 1. Like I said, this is about where the DIYer stops and has to let a professional handle it. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.